Yeah, actually, I am. I'm actually working on a certificate authority versus Dane article right now. I'm almost done. I should have it done by probably the end of this week, end of next week, and I'm gonna kind of post it to the communities to kind of read through, so they can catch any like spelling errors, make sure everything is kind of technically correct before I post it on Medium or something like that.
Dope. Have you been looking into like a cache and the other like D-Web protocols and stuff like that, and how they can fit into like your narrative and your post?
Uh, not well, not specifically in this article, but I'm not too familiar. Like I know of Sia, Akash, and the whole kind of D-Web narrative and how they all kind of interconnect, but I haven't really done like a deep dive where I can kind of speak to them and uh, kind of convey an understanding of what these protocols do. So I definitely need to do some reading, some research on these other D-Web protocols for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there should be at least some content on the Learn HNet. No, well, no, I guess there's not really too much on there. I should put like a generalized like D-Web like section on there and like put stuff for cache and all that stuff. I think that would be a good addition so people can see that. I think we have a revision coming for the Shake. So that right now the Shake just mostly exists as like the subtext Substack newsletter, which there's about like 7,200 subscribers, so there's it's grown pretty fast. But we're gonna have a formal front end website for it, which will like list all the prior editions as well as like resources like the different links, exchanges, stuff like that, similar to Learn HNS. Um, just so we can have more of a formal, trusted, like kind of like a media outlet. Just as constantly sharing updates of what's available, like to the community. That is like not for profit, right? It's just like some guys like running a newsletter. And I think like that's important in hopes that a few other people in the community like kind of copy that. And so I was trying to see like, are you trying to like grow and kind of like make it like a big newsletter thing with your posts over time, or is it just like just your way of just like seeding resources to the community slowly?
Yeah, it's kind of just what I can contribute to the community. I'm pretty new to crypto just overall, and this whole community thing, so I'm
Oh,
just
when'd you
seeing
get
where I
into it?
can contribute. Pretty much like last year, before the big March crash.
Well, yeah. Well,
So,
you guys came in at a good time, I think.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I definitely got in at a good time.
Did you get
But
your
yeah,
handshake around the 10 cent area too?
I got a pretty decent chunk at around 10-15. That's kind of where I got my initial buy-in, and then I bought a I bought a big chunk at about 60 cents because I saw a big liquidity pocket, and I was just feeling a lot of FOMO, so I just uh, bought a bunch. But it's not a big deal. So I got a very long term vision, so I'm not even worried about it in the least bit.
Well, how familiar are you with like internet, like technologies and like stacks and like kind of what fundamentally does what, like as far as like cloud storage and compute and such?
Before I was introduced to Handshake, I had actually zero knowledge of how the internet worked at all. When I first made that little infographic, that was like the first time of me learning about DNS and how it even works. So
That's
this is
awesome.
all very, very new to me. I'm still learning, but it's really exciting to me. And the more I learn, it's kind of the more I see how all this D-Web stuff can disrupt pretty much everything. So it's really awesome to see.
Yeah, because so we're moving from this concept of one blockchain to like rule them all to like some blockchains being kind of like the root of a lot of different core services and infrastructure, and then a lot of different abstracted systems, and services built on top of that. So, in this case, Handshake being the root for naming, things like SIA and Skynet being for like content distribution networks, which are like putting your information on multiple different like redundant servers so it can be accessed quickly, like lower latency, etc. Like putting your stuff around the world and storing information, peer to peer. And then you have stuff like Helium, which are like decentralized mesh networks. So like having hotspots, having things that can put data in one place or another around the globe without being dependent on, Comcast, without being dependent on Verizon, right? Like how can we create mesh networks of like systems, incentivize them to speak to each other, and kind of like cut out like those middlemen. That's essentially what things like Helium are ultimately trying to solve. Like a cache is like compute. So anything you would do with like Amazon AWS, like spinning up like a backend server, spinning up, just like a server like for something for like a name server or something like that. Da 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 da. Like you can get creative with it and like have it run on like in a decentralized manner, in that all these different data centers or different providers of like with different compute. So you have a computer at your house with like extra resources. You put it out to the network. Someone bids to use your computer for your resources for X, what period of time, and like in order to do whatever, and your computer then is responsible for that, or your data center. And so the idea is over time, as more people lend their compute, like personal computers and not just data centers, to these services over time, like those will expand. And then now you don't have to worry about like, going to Amazon or going to Google Cloud or something like that to, host your services and like have these big centralized like fail points. And then when you move into stuff like DVPN, which is like virtual private network service. So if you've ever used the VPN to like give yourself privacy, so like all your DNS requests, you go to Facebook.com, you go to even something like a porn site or something like that, that gets logged somewhere, either on your own local computer or through like your internet service provider, in order to have accountability or to remove themselves of accountability and liability when it comes to like you like doing illegal and illicit things. So if you run your stuff through a VPN, then instead of you going to like your default like DNS servers, like that set up like your home router or modem, etc. You're trying to alleviate that, and then so DVPN Sentinel allows you to do that in a decentralized manner, and now everyone is like running these nodes that allow them to be like VPN providers, and then you're just basically renting someone else's like server in order to do that. There's different like privacy whatever enhancements and things like that going forward in the future that will enable that further. So working with Handshake, which is decentralized root for a fork of DNS, which is inherently just more private. So as people use Handshake names more, they can have even greater privacy by now, using the DVPN service to resolve their Handshake name, right? So a VPN for the new DWeb. And so each of these different functional pieces are like important. So interacting with these different communities is great, because ultimately Handshake is only as powerful as a root with all the different services and layers that it ultimately ends up getting integrated with. So that's why they had to do the big airdrop to not only developers, but also open source communities with the private money that was raised. And in order to provide that incentive and to reward those communities for the work that they've already done. So that is the core ethos of the protocol upon its launch, giving money away to people and incentivizing them game theoretically to like build what's next. So yeah, so I've got some posts coming out to like highlight this more, and kind of like what that I think that'll look like. But also like a cache. They just gave us a grant for Handy Host, and the Sentinel team gave us a big grant for Handy Host as well. So we hope to create this control panel that will make all of these different services easier, so that you don't have to think, how does this work with Handshake? You can just click a couple buttons, create a wallet, and launch that service.
Yeah, I saw that stuff that you were posting on your Twitter. It's really exciting to see it kind of all coming together, and I'm really excited to see the indigenous DVPN router starting to come out pretty soon. Um,
Oh,
Definitely
Thomas
want
might
to
have
get
some
my
stuff
hands
to
on one of
say about
those.
that. Thomas is assisting with that. Thomas, you got anything to say about the that router that the DVPN folks were working on, or give us just some overall highlight of what it is?
Yeah, so it looks like they should be shipping sometime in July. They're hoping to get everybody that's in the ambassador program their devices by August. Basically, from my understanding about it all, is it's gonna be stacked with a DVPN. I believe it's a full node, tied in with a handshake node as well. So I don't have way too much information until I get my hands on one. And once I get one, I post a full review. But I'm pretty sure it should have like full GUI settings as far as editing. If you'd like to allocate any of your bandwidth for DVPN, and I believe their target is $35 a month paid back to you in DVPN. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure, but not entirely sure if it matters how much bandwidth you're supplying, or even if you're just supplying a little bit versus a lot. I think that it's still a target of $35 worth of DVPN paid back. Whenever they do release it, I'm not sure what the price target is just yet, but I do know that they want their ROI to be paid back within or around a full year. And then after that, I mean, it's all profit, just allocating some of your bandwidth. And then as far as with the whole handshake node, anything on your network, you'll be able to open up any handshake name as you please without having to edit any DNS settings or anything like that per device or per browser. That's pretty much all that I have for it right now. But once I get more information, I'll be more than happy to give it out to the group.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. I appreciate that. So essentially, we're just gonna be able to buy these routers and earn some DVPN, just like with like the helium nodes and stuff. Is that right?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I said so. We'll just be able to run these DVPN nodes and earn DVPN. These routers and earn DVPN just like with like helium and earning the HT. But is the protocol like giving this, or is just like the router company giving you this? Like, where does it come from exactly?
So the way it seems, I believe they just released like full node support for Sentinel. I think I shared that on my Twitter recently. But basically, you can already start allocating some of your bandwidth and get paid in DVPN. So what they're doing is they're tying that whole protocol into the router itself. So it'll be already built in, and then you basically you have a whole GUI set up instead of trying to run everything through DOS prompt to try to set it up as it is right now.
Okay, so it sounds like they're like DVPN or Sentinel people gave them an allotment of like DVPN, and then they're just going to be rewarding their router users, right? So like not the protocol itself, but just like them in some, I guess maybe smart contract.
Yeah, that part I don't know just yet.
Yeah, I want to figure that out, but otherwise, yeah, all this sounds like really dope. I'm also curious, like, is this like one of them router modem all in one things, or is just this a router?
It's just a router. So you plug the modem into it, and then just go through the whole setup as you would with any other type of router, and you should be able to log into the IP address and then configure all your settings through a GUI interface. I know that like Michael is like he's all the way up there with it, so he probably knows like all the ins and outs. Like if it was possible, we'd be able to get him in this chat. Like he'd be able to explain everything in like complete full detail.
Yeah, because I would want to know stuff like, is it Wi-Fi 5? Is it Wi-Fi 6? Like, what's the throughput on the router? Like, is it just like a ding ding, kind of like router? Like, I wouldn't want to really use it, or you know what I mean? Like, is it like nicely powered? I'm a nerd, so I care about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I am as well. I don't have way too much information yet. I wish I did. I thought it was
When you get
something
one
new.
of those bad boys and log into that back end panel, send some screenshots and get an idea of what's cooking in there.
Of course.
Awesome. Dope. All right, David, Handshake, Jesus, Zach, anybody else wanted to say anything? Thanks for coming into the discussion. And happy 420. Did you guys hear me? Handshake, Jesus, John Jones, Zach, Sean, R-Hefs, David Palmer.
I heard you.
How you guys doing?
Doing great. I'm surrounded by kids at the moment, so I'm just gonna keep it muted. and listen, but I appreciate you having this.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to ask you really quick, Handshake Jesus, how was things going with your name giving? If you've given any names to anyone notable as of recent?
Um, yeah, I pulled off on that a little bit because I was hoping to do it through Shake Decks. But I still have hundreds of names to gift. Um, it's just I stopped doing it through Namebase, and I was curious if how quickly Shake Decks could get together, and I wanted to use it to drive some traffic that way. But at any time I could pick it back up. I was just kind of cooling off for a bit on it.
No, okay, cool. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you were gonna want to work with Shake Decks and like the BlockExplorer.com folks?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's cool. And I thought, if we could list some names over there or drive some traffic over there, it would be a good balance for the ecosystem. The sort of the Uniswap of Handshake. Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm excited for someone to keep doing that. And also, if they experiment with using like a cache and stuff like that to run some of the back end tools for ShakeDex to decentralize it further.
Yeah, it's not widely known, but a new node written in Go was just released by Kurumi that I think he is offering the ShakeDeck support for it now.
Oh wow, Go! I know he was working on a Rust one, but he worked on a Go one too.
Yeah. I think he just pushed it. I could link it and
yeah, link that in the
talk
chat. That's really interesting. I know that he just did that thing with Preston. No, is that his name? I can't remember. But James, that's it. That's right. James Presswitch. Yeah, they worked on him with the Rust crate and stuff.
Yeah, he calls it Gohan.
It's called what? Go what?
Gohan.
Go hand?
Yeah, no, just Gohan. GOHAN. I'm pretty sure.
Go hand. Oh, that's hilarious. That's like Gohan. That's hilarious. Oh my god. Yes, link me that. Hold on. And where's Mike at? I figured he would be here. Keeper said he would be here too. I was hoping he would pop in.
Happy 420, guys.
It's 7:20 a.m. or something for him.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
He may pre-broadcast.
I'm way too high to soak in all this alpha, but I'm trying, so I appreciate it.
Hey man, that's all good. Do your thing. Say hey God for us.
I'm trying to cut down. I can't really trade when I'm too high. I get too emotional.
Sometimes the best trade is a trade you don't make, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're high all the time, eventually you're gonna hit that jackpot, no trade.
During the bull run maybe, but this bear cycle is a bit mad right now.
Okay, Hinted, you said you have a link for this Gohan thing? Because that's hilarious.
I just dropped it in the talk.
Oh, there it is. Gohan. I love that. Let me see here. Add support for Shake Decks, Gohan, Darwin, Linux. That's fucking hilarious. Oh my god.
And is this done? Like, did he finish his Goline port like fully, or is he still working on it?
Let me see. Add support for Shake Decks. Let me see. I have to go look at the.
Sentinel Indigenous router is going to be a modem as well, because I think it was detailed as being one, and I don't have access to what's it called, the modem in my flat, because it's a flat share and the room's locked off with the modem.
Okay, Gohan is in pre-alpha. Use at your own risk. An alternative handshake node and command line interface that focuses on fast performance and resource users unified APIs. Okay, so it's like it's an alpha full node. Gohan, and its 0.002 like release was just 2 days ago, so it hasn't have any major release, and it's just minor releases at this point. So yeah, very very alpha. It's interesting. Oh wait, it was Mark Kinaway that did the thing with James. I still think him and Karui Mario is the same person. That's another discussion. Oh wow, this is great.
Do you know anything about the DMCA regulations or whatever, the notices you get from running these kind of exit nodes or relay nodes? Because I would not like to have the old bill pulling up at my house talking about you owe this, blah blah blah. You've been breaching regulation for this. Like I got a lot of weed here. It'd be a bit detrimental to my setup. It's just because I was reading about if you run a Tor exit node, I think you can get a few notices from your ISP.
Oh, I mean, if you're going to be running a Tor exit node, you should have a little bit more like DNS, like know-how and understanding, like what you're doing and like what IP you're using and like what if you're like masking your MAC address, etc. Like, there's a lot that I would like if you're going to restart exploring those. Like unless you're getting an incentive to run that Tor node, like, and there's not really a reason to bring on that legal risk to yourself unless you had the know-how.
Would you have to take the same precautions for an indigenous router?
I don't particularly think so. I think as far as like sending traffic and things like that, that might be. I don't know how. I think by design, DVPN doesn't handle logging. So since DVPN by design doesn't do logging, like it'll log like sessions and things like that, but it won't log the DNS requests themselves. So by design, there is nothing to actually request.
All right, that's all right then. I'm guessing with a Tor exit node, you're definitely like running a lot more traffic and stuff than Sentinel anyway. So it'd be.
I don't really hang out on the dark web. I just found some stuff there almost a decade ago that just like really made me upset, and so I haven't been back on since then.
Nah, I was loving what was it, Alpha Bay, Dream Market, a few of them. They all got shut down though by Dutch police. I think the Alpha Bay CEO, he committed suicide in a Thai prison. He got caught.
Jeez, yeah, man. I don't know. Look, there's a lot more profitable things you can do in life with a big brain than running a dark net.
Yeah, of course. Like if I hodled that Bitcoin, I'd be rich right now. You know what I mean?
There's a lesson in there about addiction and greed.
Yeah, no, I was like 16. I had no common sense to be doing.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
16, yeah, I would not imagine.
Yeah.
All right, David Palmer, Rob F, Tom, you guys have anything to say? Welcome to the chat.
Yeah, speaking of Uniswap earlier, I'm interested in hearing more about DeFi on Handshake.
I don't really know too much about that. All I know is that Namebase was working on their own version of like Wrapped HNS, created it. There seems to be about almost 500,000 Wrapped Handshake. They're committed, but I don't know if Handshake, and I don't want to seem mean to this because I'm an investor in Namebase, but I don't think Namebase understands that in order for an LP pool to be effective, someone needs to provide both sides of the order book's liquidity. So they can't just like commit to a series of, like HNS, like, like price points. They have to actually commit to ETH too. So I think they're under the assumption that Uniswap is just this magical protocol that everyone just adds liquidity to random things all the time without an incentive. And if there is no incentive to go and wrap WHNS, no one has wrapped WHNS but Namebase themselves. And no one wants to take the impermanent loss of the price discovery that's going to come from providing Handshake finally a lot of liquidity. It just, it doesn't really make much sense. So I'm curious if they have like a market maker plan or etc. But I am hopeful that they've got it all figured out and that someone is providing feedback.
Well, like I was wondering, can they like plug it into ShakeDex somehow? Like, can you get an automatic wrapped handshake loan for your blind or for?
Yeah, I know ShakeDex right now is mostly just like it's the ShakeDex protocol runs off of like Handshake like itself, and doesn't really have any dependencies like on Ethereum as of right now. I don't believe at all, but it all depends on the competency for like smart contract dev on the ShakeDex Dex team side. So I don't really have much to say there. So, and again, the name base, what Wrapped Handshake and the Shake Dex team and stuff, them collaborating directly doesn't really make too much sense because they're almost not competitors in a sense, but that that would kind of take away market share from name base if they help Shake Dex get growth.
Right.
So it'd be curious. As the development, we've got the Shake Stats team. Let's see, we've got the Shake Dex team, we got the name base team, we got us, the Handy OSS, we got Fauci and them, and Kiba and those guys, and Zachary Fogg. Who else is another team? Oh, the HNS search team, and like a few. I guess this Karuri guy and Kurimari guy and his Gohan thing is kind of like his own little group thing. And so, there's an expansion of people who are working directly in and around the protocol, and then obviously all the HSD guys like Zipkin and all them. And so as people get more comfortable and have either sustainable means of, funding themselves, with initiatives like the Impervious and grants for like those different HSD devs and stuff. That's one example. Name Base is a for-profit company, so their developers, they're handled. The Shake Dex guys and the Bob Wallet guys, and their incentive is they probably hold a lot of Handshake. So as the price of Handshake goes up, the autonomy of each of those different teams increases greatly, and also the means by which they can hire other people increases greatly too. So really, with the price and additional liquidity coming online for Handshake, we have every incentive because that's going to provide more developer growth. And that's why, I'm my priority is getting these other different D-Web communities using Handshake by design and everything. So one of the things we did with HandyHost is bake in a Handshake resolver into DVPN. So if you're running DVPN, you're also running Handshake resolver. So same like if you use like NextDNS or HDNS.io, right? And you get a Handshake resolver by design. This is going to allow you to run one locally too, and then also run your DVPN node. And then if you're going to be doing something SIA related, we can have it designed to where it automatically will deploy an HNS resolver to run alongside your SIA nodes. Same with the cache. We can even deploy the node on a cache itself across a series of Kubernetes clusters too. And we're simplifying that UI. So this just puts, again, Handshake at the root of all the different internet services, which is kind of what was being imagined. And so as that expands, then and only then I think will we start seeing cross collaboration between the different groups, because then everyone is all financially comfy and is going to get paid. And a lot of people don't fundamentally understand that that's a really important part of, they're like, when Handshake the price gonna blow up? Well, once everyone agrees to on one narrative, but two, once everyone financially is in a position to capture some upside. And it seems to me like Namebase is almost in that position. First they just had their exchange, then the name registrar, with that, and they expanded with their marketplace, and then expanded with WHNS, and then then they put out HDNS, and then so now they've got enough services and products where they've differentiated themselves and pigeonholed themselves in this community. Shake Dex the same by partnering with Block Explorer. You got Urkel Pool guys still doing their own thing. And I almost forgot them completely as a dev team, the Urkel team. So just ultimately it's just been a waiting game as these things naturally mature, but because of the maturity of the Handshake protocol at its inception and improvements that have made since then too, it's very easy for more of these people to come online, and because of the universal applicability of Handshake.
I'm really interested in that HandyHost thing, by the way. Is there
it should be coming out by this month, and then the Sentinel Foundation team is helping us with making the website and everything. So it's a really decentralized effort, and then we got the Akash guys are gonna help us out with promotion there, and last is to try and get the Sia Coin Skynet community hyped about it with that integration. But that should bring in just more people into Handshake as the general root of the internet, in the same way that Bitcoin being added on a bunch of exchanges made it the general reserve of Bitcoin store of value. But we need these different protocols dependent on us as an internet protocol The same way people needed, people were depending on Bitcoin as a trading pair. So that's where Handshake's real value comes from. So that's why that keenly being our focus is going to provide us the most value.
Is there some kind of all-in-one hardware that you'd recommend for running HandyHost?
Nah. Really, honestly, so you got a cache which can do like compute. So if you want to have a computer with, multiple like CPUs, so you need a motherboard to support that. If you want to provide run a DVPN node, that's mostly just your internet bandwidth, right? So having a fast internet, a modern internet modem, a very fast internet, router, maybe something like Wi-Fi 6 enabled. Make sure you got a decent internet speed from your local ISP to support that, so there's no bottlenecks. Running a SIA node, that's all storage. So if you're gonna get building a desktop, you want to give yourself 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe terabytes of storage in there. Maybe multiple SSDs, so that you can provide those services to others. Again with GPUs. You want to offer compute to other people and you want to sell that when your device isn't in use, then maybe Crossfire, running like two like GPUs, running two like NVIDIA GPUs, or just like building a cluster, and getting creative with that on like PC Part Picker. Really, it's just like having the most powerful devices for hardware in your home. That should pretty much make sure that you can get the most out of HandyHost. And then again, like running a Handshake node, that's pretty like that's kind of a no big deal. Like we run HNSD in a lot of places, so it's like clients, so that's really negligible resource wise.
Like
sorry,
all in a nodal. Like I don't know if you've heard of nodal. They sell like a all-in-one Bitcoin node basically, but if you were to buy something like that, they wipe it. Would that be?
Oh yeah. So the Sentinel dudes, they want to have this base spec hardware that you can buy, that would partner with this. So with the router is one thing, and then once HandyHost is up and running, they want to embed this into some hardware and then sell that too. So that's their initiative that's going to come after this. So we're not going to touch that. We're just going to be working on the software, but the idea is like for physical hardware too, where eventually you can just buy that and then it's all boxed together.
All right, right.
Yeah, so like obviously like that's a little bit further down the line, but the website will come later on this month, and then I would imagine that they would start after the release working on that for like maybe like August, September, like October. The team works pretty fast, and they work with the foundations in Singapore, and they work with a lot of India-based like development teams, so they can move pretty fast.
Cool. I also have a question about cache for you. If you, I'm like, I was reading their wiki, and they were talking about IP pinning. I was wondering if you knew anything about that.
In what sense? I've played around with the cache, but I haven't like really got really in depth, intimately into all the services and things. Because basically, so you can run any container in the cloud, basically, and then like sell someone and let someone like auction off basically the ability to do that. So really creatively, you can do anything you can with a current cloud provider.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if they have a timeline yet for IP pinning.
I would not know that exact detail, not at this time.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, did anyone else have any questions? Want to say anything? Rob, Tom,
Speaking
Thomas?
of D-Web kind of like coming together, one protocol that I see like kind of like left on the side is Filecoin. I don't know a lot about Filecoin, but I know that it is kind of, I don't want to say the same thing as SIA, but I know it has to do with decentralized storage in a sense. But we tend to, as the Handshake community tends to lean towards more SIA than Filecoin, and they kind of get left in the dust.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I believe Chia Coin, that's another decentralized file storage that came out recently as well. They've been making a lot of headlines.
Yeah, basically it's like bonding information to a hard drive like forever, and like it just grows over time. It's like that's another like the proof of space and time. It's just another. It's a so you can think of like Sia coin as like one decentralized peer-to-peer storage, but also like a content delivery network, and that it just like places stuff in a bunch of redundant places. And then Filecoin is just like we're gonna do storage, and we're gonna store data, and we're gonna do it in fancy math and like fancy moo math and shit. And that's dope. But it's not necessarily peer-to-peer yet. That would like require some layer 2 stuff, which will come later in the same sense that Sia Coin Skynet is layer 2 on top of the base protocol, which is Sia Coin. And then you got something like Chia, which is just another means by which of creating decentralized storage. But again, they all have different incentive mechanisms. They all have kind of different protocol incentives and mechanisms on how they actually handle the storage and whether or not it's peer-to-peer innately. And I think with Chia, I think the aspect of it is that once it's burned into that hard drive, then it's available for like in perpetuity, and then you can like share this permalink to that content. And so and that is just that's all included in a layer 1. So again, the nuances are, I'm sure, many. But yeah, but again, like just like there's Westgate, there's there's Western Digital, there's Seagate, there's all these different hardware, storage devices and things like that. There shouldn't just be one decentralized storage protocol. There should be many competing. They should be all trying to offer similar, if not divided services amongst each other, and allow competition to emerge that way. Like that's a sign of a healthy market. Namespaces, not so much. Like that's not really going to occur. But for storage, like we should see many of those. Compute, same like as a cache. There's gonna be a fuck ton of more people that do that. I mean, and kind of was already existing in Ethereum, and there's like some other things like Golem and Render Token and all those things. Like it was already kind of like there. Like they're not kind of the first, but the idea is just whoever is first to cohesively all work together. Then that's the stack that's going to be standardized across the developer industry. So who can tweak the developers first, and which stack is the easiest to deploy into. So if you're a part of something like Handy Host, right, and you give us a grant, we'll prioritize where you are in that stack. At least as far as like our software goes.
Hey guys, this is Tom from Encirca. How you doing?
Hey Tom from Encirca. Nice to hear from you, man. How's handshake adoption been at Encirca actually?
Well, we're kind of holding back in terms of full-blown marketing. We do support all 700 plus, but we've got some new features out that I think the TLD operators will enjoy. I wanted to get you guys your perspective on unstoppable domains. Right, they just announced 8 more TLDs, and who knows, next week they could announce 100 more. So they're going to pick and choose among the most monetizable TLDs. So what are your thoughts about the fact that there's going to be some collisions between Unstoppable and Handshake?
So here's the funny thing about when it comes to decentralized collisions with centralized namespaces is the decentralized namespace always wins because, for instance, of Unstoppable, right? They need to deploy a contract for to be the registrar for whatever TLD they want to create. So if they want to create .crypto, they want to create .whatever, NFT what have you .wallet. They need to have private money raised, right, to provide themselves with liquidity in order to do that. Like, and I just recently heard they're going to give away like $100 million. Like the money just doesn't just come out of thin air, right? It comes out of some investors' pockets. And then there's also the tax advantages of like giving away $100 million basically as a form of like coupons, right? So it's also like a sweet tax move. And so like as you expand something like Unstoppable, you're going to make revenue through the registrations, right, as like SLDs on top of your TLDs that you're like creating, but you have the limit of like regulation, management, overhead of every single new name that you add, versus Handshake, which has like 1.5 million plus TLDs like already, and like it can be like self-managed and etc. And there's already registrars for it and da da da. So really, unstoppable domains and others like it, like ENS, which are more centrally like organized, they're just like fighting an uphill battle against like capital accruement, worry about like overhead management, making these different partnerships. It's just on a long enough time scale, they fail, right? And so a decentralized protocol doesn't have to worry about that. The blocks keep coming, the subsidies keep providing, the block halvings continue to provide like more scarcity. The registration of names continues to the protocol in perpetuity. There's no stopping that. So it's just like people just don't understand that you can't compete when the mechanics of these things work well, and then with Handshake does. It's really hard to compete with it long term, if at all. Just like with Bitcoin, like how do you compete with Bitcoin as a reserve asset unless you, and literally at this point, like even though Bitcoin isn't that amazing extensively, and it's continuing to get more so over time, like with Taproot, etc., adding more extendability, and flexibility, and security, and etc., and privacy, and da 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 da. But still, its greatest advantage is that it was fucking first. And so, it got used as one of the largest pair and reserve assets. And as the price continues to go up each of these cycles, it continues, that Lindy effect just extends, that narrative even further. So it's like, as Handshake continues to do that year over year, right? It's that narrative continues to get more sticky, and we continue to not have to answer that question, right? Like, what about this centralized such and such? What about this centralized thing? Like, and eventually, it just doesn't matter because everyone sees that they can't compete against Handshake, and that has to happen enough where people just realize how anti-fragile it actually is.
So how do you address? That's a great answer, Stephen. Thank you. But obviously, near term, immediately, you've got the Brave browser, Opera browser. You're recognizing unstoppable over Handshake TLDs. So how do you combat that?
The beauty is that Handshake is universal in its ability to be integrated, so that it can be integrated on a browser level. It can be integrated like Mike's here in the chat, perfect, right? It can be integrated on a router level, right? It can be integrated through a DNS related service like HNS. It can be integrated, by running your own resolver. You can run your own full node. You can run your own light client. Like you can pay some other service to run node for you. Like, you don't need to worry about the browser because Handshake doesn't need the browser to reach penetration. Like, yeah, like a browser would be useful, but there are already browsers like Boom Browser and Handy Browser, which showcase that Handshake can be natively integrated in the browsers, and more will come in time. But as that incentive grows through price expansion and usage of Handshake as just a protocol as itself, that those things will just come. But because we're not wholly dependent on that, unilaterally on browsers, and because we can just be put anywhere, like it's it will come. And so like right now the narrative is be based on the limited amount of understanding of Handshake and ultimately what it is and what it's seeking to accomplish. The narrative against it is, well, we need XYZ to be successful, da 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 da. But as with Bitcoin, as you saw, like early on with Bitcoin, the narrative and the example is early on with Bitcoin was, well, we need PayPal to adapt Bitcoin now, or we need Visa to adopt Bitcoin now, or we need, in order for it to be successful. And as we learned, that isn't the case. Like, that came much later, after Bitcoin had secured itself as this anti-fragile, durable form of money. And so as Handshake hardens itself and on that narrative, and people more understand what it's capable of and its potential, and sees it integrated more services, then and only then will a real narrative arise about what it can or cannot do, or what we should be wary of. But again, as the protocol, there's not too much we really need to worry about long term. As long as it does what it needs to do, work as a root anchor, which it does. It's just a fancy, or altered Merkle tree. Just a fancy altered Merkle Patricia track. And so it's, as long as it's being written to, it's doing exactly what it needs to. And that's going to continue for, ever. So it will make its case in time. And I think you don't even have to argue for it. It kind of argues for itself just by nature of existing.
Thanks for that.
On top of that, I just wanted to give my little 2 cents here. Sorry, but I think when we get Dane implementation into browsers, and when people can kind of plug and play with that, it's going to allow for a lot more security. It'll allow for HTTPS. Everybody will have that green padlock, and once we have that security for websites, I think HNS becomes a lot more useful as well because people can set up shops and people can plug in their information without having to worry about their information being stolen or something like that.
Is anyone familiar with the Decenter browser? Because I heard their DVPN is doing some sort of integration with them. So maybe Stephen, you'd be familiar with Decenter.
Familiar with what? What was the name of the thing you mentioned?
Decenter. It's Decenter with an R on the end. It's a
I haven't.
browser
I'll be honest with you. I haven't.
with DVPN, or they have a plugin with Firefox, but apparently they're releasing their own desktop client in the next week.
I haven't heard about that coincidentally, but also again, I've been trying not to be on my phone and the internet as much the past couple of weeks. Sometimes I'm more successful than others. So if this is a relatively new thing, I might have missed it.
Yes, Decenter, ticker DEC.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll definitely take a look into that. Absolutely.
Cool.
Does anybody else want to chat about anything else before we get out of here? We got about 8 minutes left before the D-Web Power Hour is over.
Hey, I'm
sorry.
here. I thought it was starting in. I had my time zones off, but I just joined in.
It's all, well, the chat has a little countdown, cute little timer and everything, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just didn't check my Telegram. Sorry.
That's all good.
I had
Yeah,
my calendar.
Yeah,
but no, I mean, it's great. I'm loving this. Thanks for doing it. I'm just getting in now, but
it just seems like a really easy thing to do on Mondays at 4:00. It's like, all right, cool, yeah, we started, cool. What's new at Handshake? If you're available, pop into this room and chat about it. Clubhouse is great and all this stuff, but it's like this is where the bulk of the conversation already happens asynchronously. So click a couple buttons, boom, it's scheduled. I like it.
That's awesome.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Was there anything, Mike, you wanted to say about the Indigenous router? If I said that correctly.
Sure. Yeah, I know the name Indigenous. Yeah, I picked the name. I hope it's a little bit. I hope it's easy to say. Yeah, I mean, we're working really hard on it. As you know, it's been getting some obviously great feedback in social media, and we're still doing the traditional Indiegogo route. I think we want to try to hit more mainstream users. Of course, there's people even on this call supporting it. I really appreciate it, and hoping for a opening Indiegogo in August. And of course, we put the Handshake logo on there. Sentinel's been really, really supportive. Like you, Steve, I'm trying to bridge these different blockchains and help the overall D-Web. But yeah, I mean, working really hard on it, talking to Factory again today.
Maybe you can provide some clarity here. So basically, it's like the Sentinel Foundation will hook you guys up with a bunch of DVPN, and then you guys will just pay it out to the router runners over time. Excuse me.
They did invest into this as a startup. It's gonna be a separate independent company that's being registered in Wyoming for an Indiegogo campaign for the fiat bank account, Mercury bank account. Yeah, so they did grants in both US and token to support this project, and they've been. Besides just that, they're also super support. I know a lot of people there too, Steve. They're super supportive.
The people, the mastermind behind the whole project is one of my oldest friends in crypto, one of my old trading buddies. Incidentally.
Yeah, so he's also I think you're probably the one that got him into Handshake, but they're also supportive of Handshake.
I'm the one that got him in most cryptos in general.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean,
we go way back. Back when I told him he's got to get rid of his ADD so he can do something in life.
Awesome. Yeah, so they're super active and supportive. And then I think it was even back in December they had Handshake in the node, and they're just starting to monetize the nodes now. But of course, they've gone through a huge. They went through ICO in 2017, and they moved from Ethereum to Cosmos in March, and and now they're starting to monetize the nodes, and this hardware project Indigenous will be building on top of that protocol with also handshake node on by default. And the tokenomics honestly are still being worked out. Maybe we can even get your feedback talking to a few people at the protocol there, but we're trying to do a minimum of $35 equivalent in DVPN tokens paid out daily.
Oh yeah,
Monthly,
just economically, my first comparison would be something like Helium, which with price appreciation of like the asset, which helped from the penetration of like the hotspots, that $35 quote unquote of DVPN can, like, if the idea is to target a US dollar value, that's different, but it's to target a US dollar value that initially over time, but the DVPN value remains constant no matter the flow of like whatever the price of DVPN is. Like that changes things, because then now you give people the option now to not only run the router and get the DVPN, but it's not a fixed dollar earning amount, but it is a fixed potential dollaring amount, and like weighted, say, like ratio based on like uptime, some multiplier to it, and then they get these earnings, and then then over time, as DVPN grows in value, as more hotspots come online, now you've got this actually effective flywheel, mechanically from a mechanism design standpoint, versus if you just say, hey, we're just gonna give everybody $35 or whatever, basically a month, just to run this, like no matter like what your bandwidth is and whatever. Like that's a good base start, but I'm sure there's a lot more complexity there.
We're I don't know if you have feedback. We're deciding if it's hourly or by block. Probably by block, right?
Like I mean, the natively, if we're going to be doing any sort of like primitive related design, you don't want to go by time. You want to go by block time, so you would go by block height.
Yeah. So that's what that's what we're confirming. Literally, I was on a call with like 4 or 5 of the core people in the protocol.
Oh yeah, if they're
like
protocol people,
so,
then they're that's all that stuff's gonna be innate. Like that's gonna be it's kind of like a bunch of no-brainer stuff. They'll know what to do.
The coolest part about it is, I mean, there's gonna be a special address for these hardware. Of course, actually, I'm happy. I want to keep it open. I don't know if we want to do what Helium did and have to buy the official devices approved. Of course, we would be approved vendor, but I still think allowing anybody to run any kind of hardware on it, I think is still okay. We're not trying to block that, but of course, this is meant to be as easy plug and play. But it'll also be, we're gonna try to keep taking care of these early supporters by knowing their wallets and taking care of them with more and more bonuses or ways to support them over the long term.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'd be curious if you could do the same with partnering. Is it, again? Is indigenous?
Indigenous. Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so it's like indigenous with digital. Cool. It's awesome.
Yeah. Exactly.
I dig it. Okay, so
Thanks.
I would also say you should do similar if you got that investment and stuff like that, because I know Cash is looking for more hardware partners for like their super mini with like their little mini computers.
Yeah.
And so I would reach out to them and see if you can do wrestle something similar as like a grant, combination of where you can like give these, have even a secondary like product like over time to expand yourself.
Sure.
And have that pipeline, because you can be like, as you reach out to investors and grow, like, yeah, right now we're doing like routers, but also eventually we can have these little desktop little like compute thing, Raspberry nodes too, that like that people can monetize, and like we can incentivize people with too, and blah 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 blah. And and if the word gets out that proof of stake protocol plus hardware is a good move depending on what your technology or microservices, then going to you would just be like a no brainer.
Okay, thanks for that. I agree. That's the long-term plan. I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's this is, as you know, these are all huge. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I actually interviewed Greg on Sky and Code YouTube a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Greg is super smart, dude. I love Greg. He's really nice.
Yeah,
he's the one that hooked us up with the cash grant for Handy Host. Big fan of that. Got we're pretty well funded now. Handy Host. We got about $500,000 for Handy Host so far raised, and we got another initiative coming out with Andre O'Shea, like a handshake NFT. So this is pretty dope. I can tell you guys this. So we're gonna be working with Andre O'Shea. He did the one for Chad Chadwick Boseman, excuse me. from like Black Panther that passed away, and they created the NFT for his Oscar and this year, which was like a really big deal. And he works at like Adult Swim and like Cartoon Network and does a lot of like those cutscene like cool shows and stuff that you normally see on there. So like he's a really good like visual artist. And so he collaborated with me on this handshake NFT. And then also we have this like sound producer that created the sound for like the clip and the GIF. And then so, you know, we'll be auctioning this off and 50% of the proceeds will go to him. The other half will go to us at Handy OSS to give away as grants. So just like, you know, they raise like, you know, money, whatever for the handshake protocol and gave that away. We're just going to be, you know, doing a little NFT sale and then giving away all the money to developers. So the auction will start off at 101.01 ETH, which is binary for 21. And then the winner gets not only an NFT, but the address that mine handshake block number one that we possess the private keys for. We don't know whether or not if we want to do the UTXO of block number one itself or just from the address. But we'll then send you 101.01 HNS from the address at mine block number one. So it's like this unique thing where you get this cool NFT, you get the artwork, whatever, da da da. You know, you get to have that, you know, original artwork that helps support the handshake and D-Web community, and then on top of that, like you get a little piece of handshake itself, which I think is like a cool added bonus. So we'll be doing it like Foundation. They did a project with Tor, and where they raised like 400 ETH or something like that, and partner with them directly with like their, you know, Web3 related like services and stuff like that with like NFT. So like they're going to be co-handling this with us directly and doing it like as like a featured, you know, auction and stuff like that with through Andre and his art, which is very popular. And we already have a bunch of like pre-bidder people from the handshake community, early angel investors, and bigger whales in the space that want to buy the NFT. So, you know, it's pretty much like a guaranteed thing, and we should have somewhere between like 50 to 100 grand of, you know, money to like give away in grants, and I'll be loose and fast with it too. With the money, it's just like no strings attached. Like, come work on handshake. Tell me what you want. Here's a proposal. Submit it to us. Done. Because I don't believe like bureaucracy really ultimately helps anything. It's just like giving capable people the means to either like find success or lose social capital. And I'm in a firm belief that a lot of people these days online care about their social capital when they're not like pseudo anonymous internet peoples. So yeah, so that's what we have like running coming up. So Handy Host, and we got this NFT art thing, and then I'm also working on this skit with Hannibal Buress still too. We recorded the first draft of it, of me just of us having a back and forth explaining like Bitcoin, Ethereum, handshake, kind of fundamentally like why they're interesting. And then he sort of like regurgitates it back to me in more of a simplified way. It's really cool. So we're gonna do the final draft of that, but then he had his first baby literally like 2 weeks ago, and then also like scratched his face all up on boogie boarding in Hawaii, where he was there having his baby. So we're waiting for him to get his moneymaker fixed up and for him to handle his baby to do the final draft. But we should have that sometime before the summer's up. But yeah, so just trying to expand handshake in a new way, and then as a fun, like we're expanding into a new narrative called Dex Grid, which will move beyond the D-Web. So, you know, kind of just like closing up this chapter and kind of leaving the community with as much as we can.
Awesome, man. So much stuff. Dex Grid. Where can study about that, or is that something I can read? I'm always trying to learn.
Yeah, if you want to learn about DexGrid, you can go to the website right now. It's still working on being completely like remodeled and stuff. But the dexgrid.io, DEXGRID.io, and you can learn more about that there. But there's not too much information on there, but there's an active deployment, and so it's like decentralized micro energy grids. But that's just the company. But the thesis itself, much like D-Web and DeFi, is called DexGrid, which includes many different type of crypto plus permaculture related initiatives. And so this sort of bonds the DexGrid company name and decentralized microgrid firm that we invested in with the concept of decentralized grids as a whole, which is great for SEO. So like, you know, as we work to expand the content strategy around the company, you know, we first have to create the narrative itself. So we put out an article today, which was the very first mention of DexGrid as a kind of a thesis, I think, kind of ever. And then the next post that I have coming out, it's called Permaculture Green with No Envy. and kind of will expand further like on these topics in more in depth with graphics and things like that, and why we think it's important.
Oh, the site's amazing. I just opened it up. There's a lot there.
Yeah, it's working with some ex-Tesla Energy people who's worked on some other crypto projects. One of my good friends, Vincent. And it kind of combines like crypto-based like incentives and also like neural networks and machine learning as far as maintaining like the grid and like transmission and like and monitoring generation and kind of being ahead instead of having like just in time like, hey, like you're using like this much energy, like reduce your consumption, or it could cost you this much. Like instead of telling you as it happens, you can tell someone 6 hours, 12 hours before it happens, based on aggregated data across the entire like microgrid like usage. So it's like just building grids from the ground up. And there's already again like an active proof of concept in Puerto Rico with like anchored electric companies. We're going to be working to be officially recognized as an electric company like grid provider by Puerto Rico probably in the next like couple of months. So once expanding there, moving to other islands like Hawaii, maybe like St. Croix, like the U.S. Virgin Islands like St. Croix, stuff like that. Yeah, and so hey, Vincent's here like right now, and so like the idea is like over time you want to take these decentralized grids, where the need for sustainable permaculture and like energy production needs to exist. So a great example is islands, right? Stuff like Puerto Rico, where they on a perpetual basis get ravaged by things like hurricanes. Like having permanent infrastructure in place that is more like resilient, with things like solar, hydropower, or whatever, being agnostic to whatever that clean energy generation is, and applying, modern technology stacks and, crypto friendly, like know-how, like into like kind of like those core concepts, and then expanding on that, like over time. So like, that's just like kind of one example. We also have some other portfolio investments, that work with this thesis, like Materium, which is kind of working on creating a registry of literally all legal things, binding insurances, basically making it so you can create a digital version of a physical object without also creating a bonded contract that holds liquidity in place, because liquidity capital itself is productivity. So if you can remove the capital productivity and like having to like hold that in place to create security, right, like something like proof of stake, and you can replace that with a series of different like legal assurances and things like that in the form of a smart contract, then you can alleviate a lot of the issues around like provenance, tracking, and also expanding on the value of digital physical items, because now they have this more kind of digital tradable certificate that now has this open market for it. And then taking those types of structures and putting those models in place in many different like avenues and different industries. Another investment is like Connects, which is basically like just in time. Like, so you have like Uniswap, which is like, how do I create a liquidity pool and order book and incentivize somebody to put capital on both sides, like buy, ask and, buy for assets, and like creating a decentralized pool for that. And then the question becomes, okay, so if all this liquidity pools exist on Ethereum, how do I route that liquidity to different ecosystems and blockchains that do similar? And then how do I incentivize it and manage that liquidity so that now that I'm moving around, now I've got the issue of now I don't have capital to actually route it from node A, B, C, D, or whatever, because there's so much activity. So like you have to know intelligently where to route that data, like that liquidity, like just in time, and like conserve it. And so Connects is like basically kind of mastered that with their protocol, and it's agnostic and can be deployed on Bitcoin, Ethereum, even things like Handshake, and individuals can like run routers that basically custody the asset in a non-custodial manner, or you control the keys, and then you can route that liquidity to a bunch of different protocols, do that, and then charge fees. And so again, there's reapplicability of that into multiple different types of industries and things like that, right? Capital is everywhere. So there's a lot of a universal reapplicability to that, which is very similar to like the Handshake protocol. So, as we get into the weeds of this and community and energy and eventually like plants and ecosystem sustainability, da 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 da. Like putting money into all those different places is where all the upside is going to be, because we've almost really tapped out like the internet part and the hardware part, because like we know where that's going, but we don't know how that's going to really invade the real world. Like governance is one way. We've seen a lot of crypto tools make their way into like governing bodies and DAOs and things like that, and like that's cool. Co-opting with those governments, but we need to co-opt in different ways, like essentially like not just with regulators, but with each other, and not just with computers too. Hey, Kiwi, good to see you here.
Guys, I'm actually about to get on a plane, so I can't really talk.
Oh no, it's all good. Just glad to see you pop up. But yeah, talked about a lot of stuff. Talked about a lot of DWeb protocols. Talked about the indigenous router. Talked about Cash and Handshake, and then now we were just finishing up here, just talking about kind of where we move beyond, like with the DWeb, and different ways that Handshake will end up being useful to the rest of the world. Partnering with all those different companies and firms and stuff that, like I mentioned, over time is going to make a lot of sense. So if you have the for instance, your decentralized routing for like liquidity, right, as like money routers. Well, now they need a phone book for your money router, so you can have like a namespace like they own .connects. So you could have something like Kiba.connects, and whenever you connect to that, you're going to connect and route through Kiba's node with all of his liquidity, right? Like that's cool. And then you could have something similar to, again, Materium, providing like liquidity to those different, digitized registry like assets. And then what else? Like DexGrid, same thing, right? Like providing like, real time like liquidity to people like running and like creating and generating energy. So now that they have a even greater incentive to set up solar panels and wind power devices and things like that. Yeah, but that's where a lot of this stuff is going. A lot of it naming comes down to the core of like really all these digital based services, like digitally native first services, because by design a consumer needs a simple way to interface with those things. So a name is like kind of the easiest means by which to do that. So continuing to leverage those things in which might seem tangential to Handshake, but really aren't at all. It's just all about over time having those infrastructure available, and then just having discussions on where we can go intuitively with our vision. Hey Vince, did you want to say anything about what you're working on, or just about Handshake in general?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yep,
Cool.
hear you great.
Yeah, I think you explained it really well. Just sort of like the note I'd make on it was what we found has been, really useful is compensating people for making like decisions, like consumption decisions that basically just sort of reduce the cost for everybody all around. And related to like Handshake and having your own domain for payment, it just really helped out in giving like setting up like a distributed way of sort of paying people out for that, which traditional space doesn't have at all. It doesn't handle it very well. So in our case, what we were talking about the island.
How you guys doing?
You were saying that we get hit by hurricanes down here, and so that just sort of wipes out these transmission lines that interconnect everybody, so everyone can have like reliable power from power plants in the south to the city in the north. But if people would just consume a little differently, then you'd be able to just rely on renewable resources just built around your community. But that kind of requires people to consume in a different way. So yeah, this kind of system is really nice for setting up systems where you can distribute out and pay out people that are just like all over the place, distributed, but like an aggregation, they become really, really valuable. Like what they can do with their choices.
And also, again, when it comes to stuff like wrapped handshake and the additional extendability that provides with being able to lend out your handshake to people and yada yada yada, and then with stuff like Kiva and then worked on with like the .badass domains, right? So taking a handshake TLD, making it accessible to to register SLDs on Ethereum using Ethereum's extendability via its smart contracting system, and then providing whole new avenues for revenue generation and profits that way. And then now you can have the means to create decentralized name registrars instead of like something that's run by Namebase. Now it can be run by, say, like a DAO or something like that, right? Like that's really dope. I'm excited to continue to see more inevitably see more experimentation around those things. But it's more so just like a matter of time. So like you just really have to look beyond prices and look at the value, and then ironically, when you start just looking at the value, the price itself becomes, well, not only irrelevant but also like you don't append that to like what is the growth and value of this ecosystem, because it's already very clear given its existing integrations that it's going to be something huge. It's just a matter of there's just so many complexity there to get through before you really see the vision.
Yeah, I mean the comment I've heard from a bunch of people, it's sort of a growing thing that people agree with once they think about it, is that like the last couple decades has just really been focused on like streamlining everything and making everything sort of like centralized and lower, or like trying to make bigger margin, lower costs, and it just led to a lot of centralized structure that's not often very reliable or resilient. And a lot of these distributed kind of manners of doing things, just we haven't thought about, I think, a lot of these things up until now.
I think a bomb's about to go off behind you, Vince.
Oh, that's the animals out here.
Oh, okay. I was like, it sounds like there's a chicken bomb going off.
No, that's either an insect or a bird.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There's no cookies here. But yeah, a lot of this is like stuff that we don't really think about until it breaks. And like in our lifetime, I think we've been noticing it a lot more. It's just like these systems are kind of fragile, and we don't value it. And it's like gonna be really expensive. Like right now, they're talking in the U.S. about building just a ton of transmission lines. That's just gonna cost the country like people don't even understand how much it's gonna cost. But we can like not have to build a lot of that stuff if we just distribute out like payments to regular consumers, like to trade off to not have to install that transmission. So that's
Yeah,
like an
no, like
example.
ultimately, it's just people like centralized companies lining their pockets for one, getting the budgets from the government to expand that infrastructure, which is like basically like free money, and then like half-assing like deploying that like all the way like across the country, and then again centralizing the profits from like that creation of like whoever it is helped like create that. So it's like I agree, like decentralized grids of things and not just energy,
right?
Farming, etc., are going to go a long way.
Yeah, exactly. Farming's like the one that they say we're just gonna sort of start seeing like collapse in crop production like next decade. So our model doesn't work good enough. It's gonna totally fail us, but we won't like price it in until it just fails. That's food. So yeah, I'm excited for that stuff especially to be built out. It's like systems that like the experts know it's gonna fail, but nobody else does, and the people that like set up how much it's gonna be don't, aren't really like pushing it. So it has to kind of be like grassroots.
So well, thanks everybody for coming in for the first D-Web Power Hour here in the little handshake talk chat. We did an hour and 20 minutes. That's good. It's pretty good. Maybe I'll do like an hour and a half D-Web Power Hour and a half, or something like that. But yeah, no, this was dope. Thanks for coming in and chatting, everybody. Hopefully we can grow these like week over week. And again, it's always just about convenience. And I know a lot of people just lurk and pop into the chat periodically and see what's new. So being able to see a little countdown timer of like what's upcoming is probably a lot of useful for folks that maybe like absentmindedly don't get to always see these weekly things. So again, thanks for coming in, guys. And if anyone doesn't have anything else to say, we'll try and do this again like next week.
Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing
Looking
this.
forward to the next one.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, man. Hoping to see everyone else continuing to do all their weekly chats and things like that too. Everywhere, and we have all these different, decentralized, distributed efforts of just like communicating things and keeping everybody on the same narrative. So, heard anything, learn anything interesting today? Feel free to share that knowledge, and we'll see you guys on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.